Welcome back to Ask the Superintendent. We'll continue our discussion on school safety and security on this segment of Ask the Superintendent. Earlier we discussed what an options-based response to emergency situations is comprised of, why the district has made the shift in response protocol, and further, the steps the district has taken to train students and staff on the options-based response protocol in emergency situations. In this next segment of the show, we hope to address communication, among other elements of school safety notifications. For those of you who may have watched our first segment, let's introduce our panel. First, we have Kelly Rogers, who is the chair of our working group within the school department working on school safety measures over this last year. Brian Ubele, who is a police officer with the Chelmsford Police Department, who was one of our SROs at the elementary level, but also assists at the middle and high school level. Donna Newcomb, who is a school committee member here in Chelmsford. And Laurie Pellegrino, who is a parent of current and former students in the school department, who is helping facilitate the discussion this evening. So Laura, thank you very much for being here and all the panel members, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. It may be helpful to understand some basic roles in ALICE. So, for example, what is the role of the police officers in ALICE?
So, in regards to ALICE, say there's an active threat situation, be it an armed person in the building, an unruly parent, it could be really any number of things. As part of our initial response, we're going to come to the scene, the school, the office building, the church, whatever it may be, and we're going to address the threat directly. As part of our initial response when we come in, whether it be a school, a mall, any different location, but specifically for this case, a school, we're going to enter the building and we're going to address the threat, whether it's arresting the person who's causing the disturbance or otherwise. From there, we can assist with taking on different roles, such as helping to maybe evacuate people or provide medical aid. But our initial response is to stop the threat and make the situation safe.
Thank you. Donna, I know that you've had some experience in your school system. What about the role of teachers? Can you talk about that a little
Sure.
bit?
I mean, I think that our role is pretty clear. It's to make sure that we do what we need to do to keep our students safe, whether that be to evacuate or to shelter in place. You know, as I said before, I think that ALICE gives us more options to be able to decide what is the thing that we can do to keep students safe in a situation like that. I will say that all of our focus will be on that. And so if I was getting texts or phone calls or whatever, you know, asking me what's happening, I probably wouldn't answer them because all I want to be concerned about are the kids right in front of me that I'm responsible for and making sure that that I keep them safe. We get out of the building, we go to the rally point, and then we decide what happens next from there. And that's really it. You know, I just want to make sure that those kids right in front of me are accounted for and safe, and that we're getting them to the next place where that they can be reunified with their parents.
Great, thank you. So there's a parent question regarding building security. Guests to our buildings are able to buzz to the school secretary and notify the secretary of their presence at the main entrance for the buildings. Guests are then required to sign in at the main office and seek assistance from school staff. Are there other security measures being considered to enhance access to our school facilities by guests and/or the general public?
If you want, I can give a little bit of an overview about some of the work that we've been doing this fall. We've been engaging some different firms to take a look at our operations. One of the things about a month or so ago, the school committee supported transferring some funding to be able to purchase a new software program called Safe Schools, or Safe Plans, I'm sorry. You know, what that will allow us to do is digitize all of our emergency response plans and protocols to put them electronically in a place where all of our staff and other first responding partners can access them in the course of an emergency. Right now, a lot of our plans are very good, but they're in paper, you know, 3-ring binder type plans. We want to make them as accessible as possible. We also want to be able to quickly update and alert staff if we make changes to those plans. So this new software program will allow us, again, to digitize our current plans, but also quickly share information out with staff if there are any updates. Again, it's very site specific. So if you happen to be a teacher at, say, South Row Elementary School, and we make some type of a global update to their particular plan, we can push that out directly to the South Row staff. So when they log in to, say, their email account, they'll receive a message saying, there's been an update to a particular element of your plan. Please acknowledge receipt. So this will help us with that type of planning. When we also engaged the firm to come and work with us on that software, they had another service where, as a third party, they'll actually come into the district and they're going to take some pictures and some video and help us with some internal and external mapping of the different buildings. But they also provide a safety overview or audit at the same time that they're doing that. So again, they're going to look at our written plans and protocols to make sure that they're current and, again, best practice among K-12 school systems, public school systems. And at the same time, they're also going to do a physical assessment of each of our buildings. So they're going to come into the schools, they're going to walk the schools. They're an outside set of eyes to kind of see where we might need to refocus some of our efforts or attention to adding different enhancements to our buildings. The school department does it, our police and fire who are in the schools all the time, will look for little tweaks or enhancements to our programs. But sometimes it's nice having someone else come in from the outside who isn't as familiar with our buildings. Sometimes people who are in the buildings all the time just kind of see the same building and they might not pick up on something, or they might not have realized a different district in a different state has adopted a particular practice that's really worked out well for them. So we want to stay ahead of the curve. So between now and the holidays, they'll be performing their physical assessments of the building, and we'll then be able to take those reports and data back and develop action plans to address any of the deficiencies or just recommendations for improvements or enhancements that might come from those walkthroughs. So there is a considerable amount of work that's ongoing, but has also taken place in the buildings to make sure that they really is structurally sound and up to speed as far as security and safety enhancements go across the district.
I want to switch to school committee mode for a second. I want to say that this is something that we take a look at as a school committee with the superintendent on an ongoing basis. And it's certainly part of our budgeting process now and our capital planning. So these are things that we're taking a look at on an ongoing basis. Unfortunately, or fortunately, obviously student safety is at the top of our list, okay? But it comes at a cost. And, trying to find the best tools for staff and students in order to be able to keep them safe is something that now we have to dedicate a portion of the budget to. And this is just the way of the world.
Right.
But it is necessary, and it's something, as I said, that we take very seriously. But I think these are the kinds of things that people don't necessarily understand are built into our budget now. You know, I think sometimes we think about salaries or curriculum and things like that, but this is what we're having to deal with now. And I think we're looking to the state for some assistance, but right now, the most important thing is to keep the kids safe.
Yeah, we are looking for a couple of different funding mechanisms. At the last school committee meeting, as Donna indicated, we actually looked at and prioritized our capital plan that gets submitted to the town for fiscal 20 consideration. So that would be money that would be available July 1st on. We have a local operating budget that the school committee has direct control over, and we have line items within that budget for largely technology, security, surveillance cameras, things along those lines. A lot of it's maintenance contracts. Once you purchase a particular product, you have to maintain the support contracts. We typically have gone to town capital, and that's what we'll be doing this year, to add some additional security features within the buildings without going into great detail. We now have the infrastructure within the buildings as far as our technology is concerned to be able to support more interior cameras in the K-8 schools. All of our external cameras in our buildings are really solid. We've upgraded those over the last couple of years. We've got very good accessibility and view of the exterior and perimeters of the schools at all times. Our high school also has a significant number of cameras inside the schools, but our K-8 schools don't. We have cameras within our main lobbies, but we don't have them within the schools themselves. So we now have the capacity on our network to add additional cameras. So that was one of the facets that we looked at. We also want to look at, securing and putting different features on our existing, say, doors. That if a door happens to be propped open or is forced open, it will trigger an alarm to be able to then notify someone within the building. Potentially you have something something that needs to be looked at. You've got an egress issue. So there are all these different kind of facets that went into it. Off the top of my head, I want to say that standalone item for kind of a 3-year technology implementation that's going to town capital was about $550,000 in year one. It was about $1.5 million to $1.6 million over the course of 3 years. So there is significant funding that's required for these enhancements. Aside from operating budget and town capital, we also do look to the state and federal government for assistance in the form of grants. And we are actually hopeful that at the end of last year, the governor put out a supplemental budget appropriation that included $5 million that's earmarked towards school safety and security enhancements. So that only came out about 2 or 3 weeks ago when that budgeting was all finalized. But we're waiting to see what that might mean for us money-wise. If we're able to access some of that funding, we can obviously then reallocate existing resources within either our operating or ask for different capital projects with the town to get a little bit further quicker with some of our prioritization of projects.
I think that Al Thomas, who's also a school committee member, brought up a great point in
he
our
did.
last meeting, which is all of these security enhancements are really important, obviously, to keep students safe. But we can't forget what we're there for, and it's to educate kids. And that we don't want to create such a situation that our schools become fortresses, and that we are not mindful of the fact that kids are coming to school in order to be able to learn and to improve academically and socially and emotionally as well. So there's a really delicate balance, between all of these things sometimes.
So, and the idea of having the plans, sharing the plans internally is great for that footprint, but more along the lines of parents or guests accessing the schools, cameras again would be welcome. And I think some of the concern that sparked this question was that there isn't anybody in some of the halls at those main entrances, so folks are buzzed in, and then it's sort of the honor system that you go right to the main office. And
I think that's what the facilities review
check
hopefully
in.
will, like Jay was saying, that second set of eyes to say,
Okay.
oh wait, I have an idea about how we can manage this a little differently, because I know exactly what you're talking about, and I feel the same way.
And I think it's something that we've been very aware of and we're trying to be
Right.
attentive to, through the budget, through this assessment, and trying to figure
So I
out
think
what are the
that'll be
next
helpful.
steps. Yeah.
Yeah, that will be. And I mean, I think we have taken a comprehensive review of all these measures, and we haven't just kind of knee-jerk reacted to things. I think we are waiting for this assessment to finalize to, again, get, what is that best practice going to be? Is it to, totally reconstruct an area in the front of our schools where we have designated staff kind of checking in and out visitors? A lot of districts have moved towards, there's different software packages out there that will actually, say, scan a driver's license and perform a quick background check on the individual to see if they have any particular issues that they wouldn't be allowed into a building. So there's and every time there's one package, 6 different vendors do the same thing in a slightly different format. So we haven't kind of just jumped at any one particular package yet. We'd really like to get this perspective from this vendor who works in multiple school systems. And again, to make sure that we're implementing best practice with the limited resources we have. We don't want to be wasteful, either with our operating budget or our capital budget. And Al Thomas did mention it's a balancing act at the last meeting, and I think we all feel that. I think there's a lot of conversations nationwide with regard to what they call kind of hardening schools, which is really, securing and locking them down, almost kind of making them a fortress, and softening schools, and what does that entail? And I think Donna had mentioned earlier as well, kind of see something, say something. Our students within our schools, particularly at the middle school and the high school level, if you talk to the building admin, are some of our best resources to notify us if something just doesn't feel right or if something is wrong. And it really comes from the connections that the staff in the buildings make, teachers, support staff, admin, with the kids that are in the buildings. And those kids come forward if something's out of place. There are eyes and ears in the schools. That's kind of a piece of that whole softening component to make sure that you have those relationships and you have that line of communication that's open, and people feel comfortable coming forward, and that the administration or teachers, whoever receive the information, act on it accordingly, and they're supported when those things come up. So it's a balancing act, and it's finding the right balance for our district.
And I don't want people to think that we're waiting obviously.
Right.
No,
for the technology
exactly.
and the facilities.
And I think people are
There's
just
so much
diligent
yes,
now because they're so much
training.
more aware.
Yes, absolutely.
And from the student, like Jay said, the students and the staff, that they're just diligent. And if they see a stranger, if they see someone with their, they know, okay, make sure they have a badge. If they don't have a badge on, you need to question them. Why are they here?
Struggling students ahead of time,
Right.
identifying kids who may be in, at risk or in need of more support. Those kinds of things are all things that we are doing on an ongoing basis. There's a lot of conversations, I think, that are happening among people in the schools around, being aware, making sure that we're communicating, and what can we do right now, because while we're waiting for this to happen, obviously, we never know, right?
Exactly.
So
we just want to keep
wanna be
those
prepared
conversations
as much as we
happening.
can right now, as we continue to explore these other things.
Okay, thank you. A teacher suggested that holding parent information sessions specific to each school may be beneficial for parents and staff to share a common language in teaching the drills and speaking to our children about option-based responses. How does the district plan to share information with parents about the drills their children will be practicing in the various schools? How do we start that conversation at home and get them comfortable?
So there were some resources that were shared at the parent forum that parents can use to talk and speak with their children about these situations. And then I know the principals, that individual building principals, are reaching out to their specific community and parent group and guardians and communicating about the drills to them. So just having that dialogue and that communication, I think, is important. Specific to, again, the drill is going to look very different at your elementary school versus your high school or middle school. So, again, it's I think level specific, right? Because developmentally, you're talking a little bit differently about a drill with a 5-year-old versus a 14-year-old. So that will, again, building or level specific information will be coming from the principals.
Maybe through PTO meetings, I don't know, that might be an opportunity because the schools all have them.
School council.
School council, to schedule a time when parents could come and they could do maybe some type of presentation around the things that you were mentioning. Because it sounds like what you may be asking as well is what about the parents in this? How do we bring them up to speed on the language and things like that? Not just the process, but...
And we want the parents to be involved, and we want them
Absolutely.
to be talking to their children about these very important issues.
It's a good conversation to have at
It's
home.
such a good conversation, and the conversation that happens at school versus at home might be very different because the teacher or staff member might not sense, an anxiety around this topic, where if at home they're experiencing that, then the parent can communicate that back to the school. So that's always helpful, working in tandem and in partnership.
Yeah, I know many of our principals also in the fall, because we're going to be leading up to these different trainings in their open houses this fall, they had a little segment that talked about how they were going to be rolling out the new options-based protocols, how they were going to be rolling out like language to use, drills and things along those lines. And I do know, particularly at the middle school and the high school level, the internal videos that we've created were shared so that people could have some sense of what the drills would look like, what the language would look like. Again, at the elementary level, there is a group working on producing a kind of Chelmsford video at this point to be shared with the schools and also parents when that's developed in December, right prior to rolling out the drills. But I do know that, again, through different means at different schools, whether it's the back-to-school meeting or PTO meetings, school site council, things along those lines. Individual school-specific questions can be addressed because, again, as much as we have uniformity, say, across our elementary schools with regard to programming, there are different nuances of each of the 4 schools. And, parents from a particular school would really be concerned with how their school is going to react in a particular situation. But I do think that those avenues for dialogue are open. It's welcomed, and there'll certainly be shared information and given ample opportunity to be able to communicate with the school their thoughts and opinions on the rollout as it goes forward.
Great, thank you. The best defense at times may be a strong defense. Does Chelmsford have a system to identify and monitor potentially at-risk staff, students, or others? And I think Donna maybe touched upon this a little bit earlier. See something, say something.
Yes, absolutely. And I really do think the kids do a terrific job. I mean, they really are our best first line of defense because they see things on social media that they may bring to a teacher's or an administrator's attention that can be investigated and sorted out as to whether or not it's a credible or non-credible threat. And then we can take the appropriate action. So it really, part of the conversation I think the parents also need to have with kids is about feeling comfortable about bringing something, no matter how silly it may seem, to their parents' attention, and to let the people the experts be able to investigate and to determine whether or not there's, as I said, there's any credibility to some of the things that we see on social media, unfortunately. But I think that there is, part of the social emotional learning that we do and things like this is just an ongoing dialogue where teachers are becoming much more aware and much more in tune with students' social and emotional needs, and being able to consult with the social worker or the school psychologist or the guidance counselor is an invaluable tool for us as teachers in the classroom.
And each school has a crisis team that they work with very closely that includes, the school psychologist, the guidance counselor, principal. If needed, we contact, obviously, the law enforcement to, join in on supporting the situation. So I feel like it's very well supported within the schools.
Touching on that, so over the last few years, the Chelmsford Police Department, along with the school department, has been growing our school resource officer program. So we do now have officers full-time in the high school and the middle schools. And it's not uncommon for students to walk in with concerns over things on social media or a rumor they may have heard or something like that. Part of getting the officers in the schools is making the students comfortable with them, so it's a little bit of extra security because they're physically there, but it also allows them to meet a police officer and get to know them and be comfortable with them in their lives.
I would say it's one of the best resources we have.
Yeah.
Absolutely,
Great.
hands down. Love having SROs for a variety of different reasons. But
And it will continue to grow over the
Yep.
next few years.
With the understanding that potentially harmful person, it's not necessarily a student, it could be staff, it could be someone external, it could be a family member, so.
I do think, because there are two, I think we have a very good handle on our existing population of students. I think there are protocols, both Donna and Kelly mentioned, within the schools to be able to identify students in need, be able to provide them assistance, or be able to kind of watch over them if we feel there are any concerns that really should be addressed by any type of either internal school department health staff or counseling staff in referrals to exterior. I think when it comes to people who aren't students at the Chelmsford Public Schools or outside potential threats, we do have very good information sharing between the school department and the police department. We have updated all of our information sharing protocols so that we really very freely share information between any potential issues within schools or anything that staff and buildings become aware of, whether it's just heard through a student but it affects a third party. The police department may contact a school and say, this is something we need to be kind of on the lookout for. So I think the communication is very strong between the departments right now. There are no obstacles to sharing information between police and schools, and even say the DA's office if it comes to someone who's court involved or someone that we need to keep an eye on. We have discussions regularly about that. So I really do feel like we're in very good shape when it comes to sharing information and being on top of those potential threats as well as we can know about.
I can't emphasize enough what a terrific relationship I think the school department has with both the fire and police department, actually, and what an invaluable resource you've been to us. I think it's a great opportunity on so many different levels for kids to have the SROs in the school.
I agree.
Has Chelmsford considered metal detectors, backpack screening, or other similar safety measures in our schools?
We have not. I think that becomes a larger community discussion, again, around kind of the hardening or softening of school security. I think what we actually employ at this point in time as far as good communication between students and faculty and staff in the buildings works for us. I personally wouldn't want to see us get to the point where we have to have metal detectors at our schools. I think it just creates a different atmosphere and it wouldn't be something I think is necessary right now, or personally I'd be in favor of without seeing a lot more research. Again, I think if we didn't have that open communication between students and staff and there were any concerns, it may be something to look at. And I know other districts do have to address those type of issues, but I think the information sharing, again, we have with our students at all levels, elementary, middle, and high school, makes me feel comfortable that if there was a particular student who was in trouble or was bringing something inappropriate to school, we hear about it immediately and then can act appropriately on it. But it isn't something that district-wide we have considered reviewing or implementing at this point in time.
Thank you.
So, Laurie, I have to say we've actually reached the end of this particular segment. So I'd like to thank everyone on the panel this evening for being here and participating with your information and answers. This wraps up our school safety and security episode of Ask the Superintendent. Thanks for joining us tonight as we discuss the new options-based response protocols in the Chelmsford Public Schools. Our goal is to keep our students and staff safe and our community members well informed of our actions in the school department. We hope we've provided many answers to some of the questions you may have had this evening. If you have any additional questions or would like additional information shared with any individual within the school department, you can always reach out to us by email. We have monthly community coffees where if you'd like to come by and see myself or the assistant superintendent and talk about issues within the schools, you can do so. You can email school committee members. You can call school committee members if you have any questions or concerns you would like to share. Also on our website, you can go to our website and ask a question or find helpful links to different resources within the district. So again, I'd like to thank one last time Kelly and Brian, Donna, and Laurie for joining us this evening. And we hope the community feels more informed about the schools and our safety and security measures after hearing these discussions. So thank you.